On a rainy afternoon in the heart of the city, a barefoot little girl held a baby close, shielding him from the cold. She didn't beg for food for herself, only for her baby brother. And when a stranger stepped in to help, she looked him in the eye and said, "I'll pay you back when I grow up." That one promise set off a chain of events that would change all their lives forever. Sit back, watch, and remember, kindness may be small, but it can open the door to miracles. The Harmattan wind swept through the streets of Lagos that morning, carrying fine dust and a sharp chill. The sky was pale, the air dry, and people walked quickly, rubbing their hands for warmth. Inside a busy supermarket, the smell of bread mixed with the cold air from the open doorway. Customers pushed trolleys, picking things from the shelves, talking in low voices. Near the baby section, a small girl stood holding a tin of baby formula. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old. Her hair was in rough, uneven puffs, her shirt was stained, and her jeans were torn at the knees. Her hands were dirty, and she held a baby wrapped in a faded Ankara cloth tightly against her chest. The baby whimpered softly. She stepped up to the cashier's counter. "I want this, please," she said, placing the tin down. The cashier, a young woman chewing gum, raised her eyebrows. "Money?" The girl shook her head. "I will pay when I grow up. I promise." The people in the line stopped and looked. The supermarket went quiet for a moment. The cashier scoffed. "Little girl, this is not a charity. Go and call your mother or father." The little girl looked down, holding the baby closer. She began to turn to leave, her small shoulders trembling, not from fear but from shame. Then a deep, calm voice spoke from behind her. "She's not stealing?" she asked politely. The cashier looked up quickly and froze. Standing there was Patrick Adeyemi, the man most people only saw in magazines or on TV. He was tall, with grey at his temples, wearing a dark suit and a look that made people listen. Many called him the invisible billionaire because he hated publicity, even though he owned one of the biggest tech companies in Africa. "Sir, the cashier stammered. "Look at her clothes. She doesn't belong here. She looks like a street beggar." Patrick's eyes softened. "I will be the judge of that." People started whispering. "That's the girl who sleeps under the bridge at CMS," someone near the bread stand murmured. "I heard the father abandoned them," another voice said. "And her mother is not well." Patrick knelt beside her. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Rebecca," she whispered without looking up. "And the baby?" "My brother Justin. He's just 1 year old. He needs baby milk." Patrick lowered his voice. "Did you walk here in this cold?" Rebecca nodded. "We ran out of milk yesterday. Justin keeps crying. I waited till Mama fell asleep to come out. Sometimes she shouts and I didn't want her to follow me." Patrick's eyes moved to the thin Ankara cloth. "Do you have a coat?" Rebecca shook her head. "I wrapped Justin in the cloth. It's all we have that is warm." Patrick stood slowly, his mind already made up. "Come, we're getting more than just milk." He picked up a gallon of fresh milk, the baby formula, loaves of bread, baby wipes, diapers, thermal socks, tins of food and other groceries. People stared as he added packs of pasta, rice, beans, soap, and cooking oil to the basket. At the counter, Rebecca stretched up and placed the milk there with both hands, like it was something precious. "Thank you, sir," she whispered. "I will pay you back when I grow up. I promise." Patrick looked at her seriously and smiled. "I don't doubt you for a second." When they stepped outside, the cold wind touched their faces. Patrick turned to her. "Where are you staying?" Rebecca hesitated. "It's okay," he said. "You can tell me." She looked up shyly. "Under the bridge. There's a dry corner near a big pipe. I keep Justin warm with old papers and I hide so no one will see us." Patrick's chest tightened. He knew the place. It was not safe. "Do you want me to walk you back?" he asked. She shrugged. "People shout when they see me with him. But you can come if you want. Just don't talk loudly. Mama gets scared easily." Patrick nodded, holding the bag of groceries in one hand. And so they began to walk together, one billionaire and one little girl with a baby, towards a place no one expected him to go. They walked in silence for a while, Rebecca in front, her small arms wrapped tightly around Justin. Patrick followed a few steps behind, carrying the heavy grocery bags. The harmattan dust hung in the air, clinging to their skin and making each breath dry. They passed busy streets and quiet corners, then turned into a rough, uneven path beneath the Ajora Bridge. The sound of traffic thundered above them like a distant drum. The air here was different, thick with the smell of exhaust fumes, damp concrete, and rotting garbage. Patrick had been under this bridge before, years ago during a charity project, but this time it felt different. He wasn't here to sign a check or pose for a photo. He was following a little girl into her home. They weaved between piles of rusted metal, old wooden pallets, and discarded tires until Rebecca stopped in front of a makeshift wall of cardboard, plastic sheets, and worn blankets. Behind it, curled on a thin mat, was a woman. Her hair was tangled, her face pale under the layer of dust, and her blanket was so old it had lost most of its color. Rebecca knelt beside her. "Mama," she said softly, "it's me. I brought milk." This man helped us. The woman's eyes opened slowly. She blinked, then pushed herself up on one elbow. Her gaze went from Rebecca to Patrick, suspicious and guarded. "You weren't supposed to leave," she said, her voice rough and low. Patrick stood still, letting her see he meant no harm. She was thin, her hands trembling slightly, and her breathing uneven. She didn't look mad, just tired in a way that went deeper than the body. The kind of tired that came from years of hardship. He quietly wondered what she had been through to end up here. Where was the father? How did things fall apart so badly that she was now living under a bridge with 2 children? He had no answers, only questions that weighed on him. Rebecca held out the tin of baby formula. "I just went to get food for Justin. We didn't have any milk. He was crying." The woman, Stella, took the formula slowly, glancing at Patrick again as if expecting him to suddenly change his mind and snatch it back. Rebecca turned to Patrick. "You can go now. We'll be okay. I just needed the milk and I will try to pay you when I grow up. I mean it." But Patrick didn't move. He looked at Stella, then at Rebecca. "I want to come back tomorrow. Is that all right?" Rebecca tilted her head. "Why, sir?" "You don't have to." Patrick's voice was calm but firm. "Because someone should." Stella didn't answer, but she didn't tell him to leave either. The roar of traffic filled the silence between them, carrying the dust of the city into the cold night air. Then he turned and left. The next morning, the harmattan air was sharper, the dust heavier. Patrick dressed simply, dark jeans, a plain navy sweatshirt, and an old jacket. He left his car parked a short walk away from the bridge, carrying a small flask and a paper bag. The streets were still waking up. Hawkers were setting up their stalls, and the smell of frying akara mixed with the faint scent of petrol from passing tricycles. The sound of traffic rumbled overhead. He stepped past the rusted shopping carts and bent pieces of iron until he reached the little wall of cardboard and plastic. Rebecca was still asleep on a flattened piece of cardboard, her arms wrapped around Justin, who was curled into her chest like he was part of her. The thin Ankara cloth was pulled up to his chin. His tiny hand still clutched the corner of Patrick's coat from the day before. Patrick crouched down quietly and opened the flask. The warm smell of tea rose into the cool air. He poured a little into the small cup that came with the flask and tapped Rebecca gently on the shoulder. Her eyes opened slowly, then widened when she saw him. "You came back," she murmured, sitting up. "I said I would," Patrick replied, handing her the cup. "Careful, it's hot." Rebecca took a cautious sip. Her eyes lit up. "It tastes like Christmas," she said with a shy smile. Patrick smiled faintly. That was the idea. A rustle came from behind the blankets. Stella appeared, squinting at him. Her hair was messy, her eyes still clouded from sleep. She looked at the flask, then at the bag in his hand and frowned. "You again," she said slowly. "You with the government? Or some NGO?" Patrick shook his head. "No, just a man who wants to help." Stella's expression stayed hard. "People like you. You show up, drop food for a few days, then disappear. I've seen it before." Patrick met her gaze. "I'm not here to disappear. And I don't feel comfortable leaving you and the children under this bridge like this." Stella crossed her arms, still suspicious. "So what?" You think you can fix everything? No, Patrick said simply. But I can at least get you a warm bed and a hot shower for a week. No questions, no strings attached. She looked at him for a long moment, as if searching his face for the hidden reason. Why? Because nobody should live like this. Not you, not Rebecca, not Justin. Rebecca glanced at her mother, her eyes hopeful. Mama, please. Stella sighed, the fight in her shoulders softening just a little. All right, she said quietly. Just for a week. Patrick nodded. A week is a start. The taxi ride from the bridge was quiet. Rebecca sat in the back, holding Justin tightly, her eyes darting between the city streets flashing by. Stella sat beside her, her arms folded, watching everything like a hawk. Patrick sat in the front with the driver, giving short directions to a part of town where he knew it would be safe and quiet. They stopped in front of a modest hotel tucked between a bakery and a stationery shop. The sign was old but clean, the paint faded from the sun. Inside, the lobby smelled faintly of lemon polish. A ceiling fan turned lazily above, and the receptionist greeted Patrick warmly before handing over the room key. This way, Patrick said, leading them down a short hallway. The room was small but cozy. A soft double bed sat in the middle with neatly folded blankets at the foot. There was a wooden wardrobe, a small table by the window, and curtains with faded floral prints. The air smelled faintly of fresh soap from the cleaning that had been done earlier that day. Rebecca stepped in and stopped. Her eyes swept over the bed, the lamp on the side table, the warm glow from the window. She took a deep breath, almost as if she didn't believe the warmth was real. It's warm, she whispered. That's the heater, Patrick said, placing the groceries on the table. She's old, but she works. Stella stood near the door, her bag clutched tightly in her hand. She didn't sit, didn't smile, just stood there, scanning the room like she was still expecting trouble. Patrick opened a small duffel bag he had carried in and placed things on the table. New toothbrushes, toothpaste, bars of soap, clean towels, diapers, a packet of sanitary pads, and a few simple clothes for Rebecca. These are for you, he said. No charge. Rebecca gently set Justin down on the bed, tucking the blanket around him the way she'd done 100 times before. Then she turned to Patrick and reached into her pocket. I made this, she said shyly, holding out a small, folded piece of paper. Patrick opened it carefully. It was a pencil drawing, 3 stick figures holding hands in front of a simple square building with a pointed roof. Above the roof, in careful block letters, was one word. Home. His throat tightened. You're quite the artist, he said softly. Rebecca smiled for the first time that day. But Stella's voice broke the moment. Don't get too close, she said sharply. Patrick looked at her. To what? To us, she replied, her tone firm. Rich people are trouble. You all come with promises, but there's always something you want later. I want nothing to do with any of you. Patrick stayed calm. I'm not here to own anything or anyone. I'm just here to walk beside you, for as long as you'll let me. Stella didn't answer, but she didn't tell him to leave either. She turned her gaze back to Justin, who was sleeping soundly in the warmth. Patrick quietly stepped back toward the door. I'll check in tomorrow, he said. Rest well tonight. The next day, before the first light touched the streets, the sound of passing cars on the main road was the only thing breaking the silence. In the small hotel room, Stella sat on the edge of the bed, her eyes open and restless. The warmth in the air, the clean sheets, and the faint smell of soap should have made her feel safe. But instead, it made her uneasy. She looked over at Rebecca and Justin sleeping soundly. For a moment, her face softened, then her expression tightened again. She had seen kindness from rich people before, kindness that came with hidden strings, and in her world, nothing given freely stayed free forever. Wake up, she whispered sharply to Rebecca. Rebecca stirred, rubbing her eyes. Mama, it's still dark. Get your things. We're leaving now. Rebecca's voice was small. But what about Mr. Patrick, he said. That's exactly why we're leaving, Stella cut in. I don't want you thinking we owe him anything. We survive on our own. We've done it before, we'll do it again. Rebecca obeyed silently, wrapping Justin tighter in the faded Ankara cloth. They left through the back stairwell, slipping into the cold Harmattan air before the city was fully awake. Later that morning, Patrick parked outside the hotel and stepped into the lobby carrying a paper bag filled with akara and bread and a neatly folded blue coat for Rebecca. He knocked on the room door once, twice, before trying the handle. It opened easily. The bed was made. The toiletries he'd bought were untouched. The folded towels still lay neatly where the cleaner had left them. The room felt empty. He checked the bathroom. Nothing. The wardrobe. Nothing. It was as though they had never been there at all. Patrick's stomach sank. Down at the reception desk, he asked the young man behind the counter, "The woman and 2 children in room 12. Where did they go?" The boy shrugged. "They left early. Gave me the key. Didn't say where they were going." The rest of the day, Patrick drove through the streets, stopping at shelters in Surulere, Yaba, and even down toward Ebutimeta. He asked at food banks, churches, and roadside stalls. Nobody had seen them. By evening, the Harmattan air felt colder than usual. The sun dipped low, turning the sky orange, but Patrick wasn't ready to go home. Instead, he found himself driving back towards the Ajora Bridge. He parked a short distance away and walked into the underpass, his shoes crunching on the grit and scattered debris. The place where Stella had built her small corner was empty now. The old cardboard was gone, the plastic sheets folded and missing. The space was just concrete and shadows. Patrick sat down on the low curb, the traffic above thundering like distant waves. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out Rebecca's small pencil drawing. The man, the girl, and the baby standing in front of the house labeled home. He stared at it for a long time, his fingers tightening around the paper. "I'm not done," he said quietly to the empty air. The next few days blurred together for Patrick. He drove through Lagos like a man chasing ghosts. Owelegba, Idumota, Marina, Ojota, anywhere they might be. Every shelter he stopped at gave the same answer. No one matching Stella and her children had been seen. On the 4th day, a lead came from a street vendor near a small chemist. "I saw a little girl carrying a baby," she said, "thin like broomstick. She asked me if I knew any place to get medicine." Patrick's heart tightened. "Which way did she go?" The woman pointed toward a busy city park not far from the main road. When Patrick got there, the park was crowded with people escaping the afternoon heat, hawkers with roasted corn, children chasing each other, men sleeping on benches. He scanned the area slowly until his eyes caught a small figure sitting alone on the far side, partly hidden behind a low hedge. Rebecca. She was rocking Justin in her arms, humming softly, her face pale and tired. Patrick walked toward her, keeping his voice gentle. "Rebecca." She froze, then looked up quickly. Her eyes widened. "Mr. Patrick, you found us." Patrick crouched down beside her. "Where's your mother?" "She went to look for medicine for Justin this morning," Rebecca said quietly. "She told me to wait here for her, but it's been a long time." Patrick glanced around the park. "How long?" Rebecca shrugged, trying to hide the fear in her eyes. "Since after breakfast." A heavy cloud passed over the sun, dimming the light. The air grew cooler, and the first faint growl of thunder rolled in the distance. People in the park began to pack up their things. Patrick looked at the sky, then back at Rebecca. "It's going to rain. Come with me to my house. You and Justin can rest there until your mother comes back." Rebecca's arms tightened around Justin. "But what if she comes here and we're gone?" "I'll leave a note for her," Patrick promised. "And I'll come back here to look for her, I swear it. But I can't leave you two sitting in the rain." She bit her lip, glancing again toward the park entrance. The wind picked up, lifting strands of her hair. A light drizzle began to fall. Finally, she nodded. "Okay." Patrick took the grocery bag he had brought with him, slung it over his shoulder, and carefully lifted Justin into his arms. Rebecca followed close beside him as they hurried toward the car, the rain beginning to fall harder around them. The rain was falling in steady sheets by the time Patrick's car pulled into the underground parking of his Ikoyi apartment building. Rebecca sat quietly in the back seat, her eyes darting to the glass walls, the uniformed security guards, and the polished floors as they walked inside. They stepped into a private elevator, and she clutched Justin tighter as the doors closed. The soft hum of the lift was the only sound until it opened to reveal a wide, open penthouse with high ceilings and floor-to-ceiling windows looking out over the city. Rebecca stopped just inside the door, her eyes wide. The warm air and faint scent of fresh flowers were a world away from the damp concrete of the bridge or the cold bench in the park. "This is where you live?" she asked softly. Patrick nodded. "Yes, and for now it's where you and Justin will stay too." Her gaze roamed over the leather sofas, the polished tables, the soft lighting. "It's so big," she whispered. Patrick smiled. "It's just a house until people fill it. Come on, I'll show you your room." He led her down a hallway to a bright bedroom with a wide bed covered in a soft white duvet. A small wardrobe stood in the corner, and warm curtains framed the window. "This one's yours," he said gently. Rebecca touched the bedspread, almost afraid it might disappear. "I've never had such a big and comfortable bed before," she said. "Well," Patrick replied, "it's about time you did." A maid arrived with clean baby clothes, fresh towels, and a small cot for Justin. Another brought a tray with hot rice, chicken, and a cup of fresh juice. Patrick excused himself to give her space, but lingered in the doorway as he watched Rebecca settle Justin in her lap and feed him spoonfuls of mashed vegetables with such care it made his chest tighten. The boy gurgled happily between bites, and Rebecca smiled down at him, her small hands steady and gentle. Patrick found himself marveling at her strength, how someone so young could carry so much responsibility and still give so much love. Later after dinner, Patrick sat with Rebecca in the living room. She was curled up on one of the big chairs, Justin asleep beside her. "We need to find your mother," he said quietly. Rebecca nodded, her voice soft. "She always comes back, but I don't know why she didn't today. Or maybe she did, and we left already." Patrick leaned forward. "We'll look for her together. I promise. And until we do, you're safe here." Rebecca met his gaze and gave a small, tired smile. "Okay, please do." Patrick kept his promise. The morning after Rebecca and Justin settled into the penthouse, he picked up his phone and called Mike Oladipo, a retired police detective who now ran a small private investigations firm. "Mike, I need your help," Patrick said. "It's about a woman named Stella, thin, mid-30s. She might be sick, maybe confused. Last I saw her, she was living under the bridge. I need to find her." Mike didn't waste words. "Text me what you have. I'll get back to you." 2 days later, Patrick's phone rang. "Got her," Mike said. "She's in Ebute Metta, near an old church. Looks shaken." Patrick's heart jumped. "I'll meet you there." When he arrived, he saw Mike standing beside a weathered church wall. Sitting on the low steps was Stella. Her hair was messy, her wrapper loose around her thin frame. In her hands she clutched a cracked baby bottle, her eyes red from crying. The moment she saw Patrick, she stiffened. "Where are my children?" "They're safe," Patrick said gently. "They're with me. I've been looking for you." She shook her head quickly. No, I thought..." Her voice broke, and she pressed her face into her hands. "I thought someone took them. I went everywhere. Everywhere." Patrick crouched down so they were at eye level. "Rebecca and Justin are okay. If you're ready, I can take you to them right now." She looked at Mike, then back at Patrick. Her lips trembled. "Really?" "Yes, because they need their mother," Patrick replied simply. The ride to the mansion was quiet. Stella kept her hands clasped tightly in her lap, eyes fixed on the city passing outside. When they stepped into the penthouse, Rebecca was on the carpet playing with a small stuffed toy, while Justin napped in his cot. The moment she saw her mother, Rebecca dropped the toy and ran. "Mama!" Stella knelt, wrapping both arms around her daughter, holding her so tight it was as if she feared letting go. She kissed Justin's forehead as Rebecca guided her to the cot. When she finally turned to Patrick, her voice was low but steady. "I don't know how to do this. I'm scared to accept help. Every time I have before, it ended badly." Patrick nodded. "I understand. I'm not here to take anything from you. Just to make sure you and your children are safe." She hesitated, then said softly, "Thank you for keeping them safe." It wasn't much, but in her guarded tone, Patrick heard the start of something new, a fragile trust, small enough to break, but strong enough to grow. The first few days passed quietly. Stella kept mostly to her room, coming out only to check on Rebecca and Justin. She accepted meals from the house staff but spoke little, answering Patrick's questions with short nods or a polite thank you. Still, something was shifting. On the fourth day, Patrick suggested a family-style lunch in the dining room. The long table was set with jollof rice, grilled chicken, fried plantain, and fresh vegetables. Patrick sat at the head, with Stella on one side and Rebecca on the other, Justin in a baby seat between them. Stella glanced at the spread and frowned slightly. "I don't want charity," she said quietly, her voice carrying a note of pride. "I just want a chance to rebuild, to stand on my own again." Patrick met her gaze. "Then that's what we'll work towards. But for now, you and your children deserve to eat without worry." Rebecca broke the moment by tugging on Patrick's sleeve. "After lunch, can we build a fort?" Patrick smiled. "Only if your mum says yes." Stella gave a small shrug. "Go on." In the living room later, Rebecca and Patrick stacked pillows and blankets into a makeshift castle. Rebecca laughed as she dove inside, calling it our fortress. Even Stella, sitting on the sofa, allowed herself a small smile. It was the first time Patrick saw her shoulders drop, the tension easing just a little. That evening, the house was quiet. Rebecca and Justin were asleep and the city lights glowed through the tall windows. Patrick sat in the living room with a mug of tea. Stella came in, wrapping a shawl around herself. "Couldn't sleep?" Patrick asked. She shook her head and sat across from him. For a while they listened to the hum of the air conditioner and the faint sounds of traffic far below. Then Patrick spoke, his voice low. 10 years ago I lost my wife, Anaya." Stella looked up, surprised. "We'd been married only 4 years," he continued. "She was my best friend, and my anchor. One night, she went out to meet a friend for dinner. A drunk driver ran a red light. She didn't make it." He paused, the memory still heavy. "I buried myself in work after that. My tech company grew, my bank account swelled, but my life stayed empty. I avoided the media, stayed out of the spotlight. People call me the invisible billionaire, but really, I was just hiding. From people. From life." Stella's expression softened, though she said nothing. "I don't tell many people that," Patrick said. "But I thought you should know. You're not the only one who's had to start over after losing everything." For a long moment, Stella just looked at him, her guarded eyes searching his face. Then she gave a small nod. "Thank you for telling me." It wasn't a smile, but it was something. A window opening, if only a crack. Patrick's voice softened after sharing about Anaya. "Meeting you and the children," he said, glancing toward the hallway where Rebecca and Justin slept, "has woken something in me. I'd been moving through life like a shadow, thinking I was past feeling anything real. But helping you," he looked back at Stella, "it's given me meaning again. Not just as a man who can provide, but as a human being who can care, who can love again." For the first time since they met, Stella held his gaze without looking away. There was something in his tone, honest, almost vulnerable, that loosened the knot in her chest. She took a slow breath. "You've told me your story. I think maybe I should tell you mine." Patrick leaned forward slightly, listening. Her voice trembled at first, but soon the words began to flow. "Darnell, that's Rebecca and Justin's father. When we first met, I thought he was different. He was charming, rich, confident. My parents didn't approve. They said he was arrogant and controlling. But I thought they were wrong. I married him anyway." Her lips tightened. "They stopped speaking to me after that. I lost my family the day I married him." Patrick said nothing, letting her go on. "After I had Rebecca, I left him. He had a temper, and sometimes he'd take it out on me. But he begged me to come back, promised he'd change, and I believed him." Her voice broke, and she looked down at her hands. "Instead, he became worse. He hit me on the head with something once. I remember waking up dizzy for days. After that, I started having these episodes, seeing things that weren't there, imagining people following me. I'm better now, but sometimes I still look like I'm not. People think I'm insane. I'm not. I've just been through too much." Patrick's jaw tightened. "One day I left him for good. I knew he'd hurt the kids if we stayed, but I also knew he'd try to find us. Once he actually did. He came to the park where I was sitting with Justin, and he threatened to take the baby. I was lucky to get away." She paused, blinking hard. When I went back to the park that day and didn't see the kids, I thought he'd taken them. My heart almost stopped. Patrick's hands curled into fists. No one should have to live like that. No one. His voice was low but steady, anger simmering under the calm. The next morning, Patrick called Mike Oladipo and told him everything. "I need to make sure Stella, Rebecca, and Justin are safe," he said. Mike's voice was firm. "You need to file a restraining order, and I can assign someone to keep watch for now." "Do it," Patrick replied. Later that day, Patrick knelt beside Rebecca. "You're safe here, I promise. No one is going to take you or Justin away." Rebecca nodded, leaning into him, and for the first time, she seemed to fully believe it. The next morning, Mike wasted no time. He began making calls, arranging a discreet but well-guarded safe house far from the heart of the city. Patrick stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse, phone pressed to his ear, speaking with Mike in a low, measured tone. Stella sat at the breakfast table, hands wrapped tightly around a mug of tea, still processing everything from the previous night. Rebecca played quietly on the floor with Justin, occasionally glancing toward her mother. The room carried a mix of gratitude, unease, and the unspoken question of what might come next. Later in the day, as Patrick was just outside the mansion gate speaking with the concierge, a black Jeep drove close to the entrance. Then the door slid open, and a tall, sharply dressed man stepped out. His presence immediately drew attention. Expensive suit, confident stride, and a look that could freeze the air. His eyes scanned the environment, lingering briefly on Patrick before moving past. "Looking for someone?" Patrick asked, his tone polite but guarded. The man's lips curved into a thin smile. "Just visiting a friend." Patrick frowned. "Name?" The man's gaze held his for a beat too long before replying. "Stella." Patrick's stomach tightened. "And you are?" "Let's just say, someone who knows her very well," the man said, voice dripping with implication. Patrick didn't respond, but his eyes followed the man until he turned and walked back to his car without another word. Something about the exchange left the air heavy with tension. When Patrick returned upstairs, he found Stella in the living room, holding Elijah. He described the man he'd just encountered, the height, the expensive suit, the cold eyes. Her hands trembled, and her face drained of color. "That's him," she whispered, clutching Elijah closer. "That's Darnell." She didn't want to see him. She couldn't. The trauma was still too raw, the memories too sharp. Patrick called Mike immediately. "He was here. He knows where to find her." Mike's voice was calm but firm. "Then we move them now. Tonight. I've got the place ready, low profile, secure, and guarded." Stella hesitated, but finally nodded. "All right," she whispered. "We'll go." By nightfall, Patrick had personally driven them to the safe house, a cozy and comfortable home tucked away in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood. Inside, warm lighting and simple furniture gave the place a sense of peace. Stella carried Justin to a small bedroom while Rebecca peeked into every corner, her curiosity slowly replacing fear. Patrick lingered at the door, watching them settle in, silently vowing he wouldn't let Darnell or anyone shatter this fragile safety. The safe house quickly became more than just four walls for Stella. It became a breath of air she hadn't felt in years. In the small backyard, she discovered a patch of overgrown soil and with quiet determination began to clear it. The earth under her fingernails, the scent of fresh leaves, the rhythm of planting, each movement was grounding, a reminder that she could still create life and beauty out of ruin. Rebecca, inspired by the calm, found herself sitting at the small wooden desk in her room, scribbling in an old notebook Patrick had brought. She wrote about brave girls, magical gardens, and a place where no one could be hurt. It was her way of capturing the safety she finally felt, even if just in stories. Patrick visited every day, his arrival marked by the sound of the gate creaking open. He brought snacks for Rebecca, soft toys for baby Justin, and books or gardening tools for Stella. Between unpacking the treats and sharing the news he'd gathered from Mike about their safety, his presence felt steady, like a bridge between the chaos they'd escaped and the future they might build. As the days passed, Patrick and Stella found themselves talking more, not about threats or plans, but about trust, about mistakes, about the fragile courage it takes to believe in second chances. One evening, as they stood on the porch watching the sun dip below the trees, their conversation slowed. Stella looked down, her hands brushing soil from her palms. "It's been a long time since I felt like I could breathe." Patrick's gaze lingered on her, the fading light softening the lines of worry on her face. "Then keep breathing," he said quietly. "You're safe here. I'll make sure of it." For a moment, the air between them felt charged. Unspoken fears, quiet gratitude, and the faint glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, they were both finding something worth holding on to again. The peace at the safe house didn't last long. One late afternoon, while Stella was tending to a small garden and Rebecca was inside reading, Mike arrived with a grim look on his face. He had just received word Darnell was nearby. It hadn't taken him long to track them down. 2 days later, the threat became reality. Disguised in a courier's uniform, Darnell walked up to the safe house gate holding a package, pretending it was for Stella. His attempt to get inside was short-lived. Patrick's security team, already on high alert, intercepted him before he could even step through the door. The moment they restrained him, his disguise fell apart, literally and figuratively. Patrick wanted to keep Stella inside, but she stepped forward, her voice steady despite the fear she had carried for so long. "I want to face him," she said firmly. When they brought Darnell into view, his eyes narrowed at her, but for the first time, it didn't shake her. She met his stare without flinching. "You don't own my fear anymore," Stella said, her tone clear and unyielding. "You don't own my silence either. I have chosen myself, and I've chosen my children. You will never threaten us again." Her words hung in the air like a verdict. Darnell tried to speak, but the security team moved him toward the waiting police vehicle. Stella watched as he was handcuffed and taken away, her chest rising and falling with the release of years of tension. When the gate closed again, Patrick placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You're free now," he said quietly. The atmosphere lightened in the days after Darnell's arrest. A few mornings later, Patrick arrived at the safe house with good news. "It's official," he told Stella. "The restraining order is in place. Darnell can't come near you or the kids again." Stella let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "I don't fear him anymore," she said softly. "And now, knowing he can't take my children from me, I feel free." "Thank you, Patrick." Her gratitude was genuine, her voice carrying a weight of relief. Later that afternoon, Patrick surprised her again, this time with something tangible. He handed her a set of keys, a small envelope, and a sleek new phone. Inside the envelope was the deed to a modest but beautiful house, fully in her name. "And the car outside is yours too," he added with a small smile. "No strings attached." Stella's eyes widened. "Patrick, this is too much." "It's not charity," he replied gently. "It's a chance to rebuild." Over the following weeks, they continued spending time together. Patrick respected her space, never pressuring her emotionally or romantically. He listened more than he spoke, supported her recovery, and let her set the pace. They began sharing quiet, meaningful moments, sitting side by side on the porch watching the sunset, cooking together, or talking late into the night about life, pain, and hope. The connection between them deepened, built on trust rather than urgency. One evening, as the soft hum of night surrounded them, Stella asked, "Why haven't you ever asked for more, after everything you've done for us?" Patrick's eyes held hers. "Because healing doesn't happen on someone else's timeline," he said. "I'm just here to witness your strength." Something in her softened. Slowly, Stella began to let her guard down. She leaned on him, trusted him, and even admitted she felt safe, something she hadn't felt in years. One lazy Sunday, Rebecca grinned mischievously at them over lunch. "Mom, I think you should marry Uncle Patrick. You both like fried rice and you're both bossy." Patrick chuckled. "Bossy? Me?" Stella shook her head, laughing. "Rebecca, you watch too many movies." But the warmth in her smile that day spoke volumes. With Patrick's steady encouragement, Stella finally found the courage to reach out to her family. They were a modest, close-knit household she hadn't seen in years, not since she'd chosen Darnell over their advice. Patrick drove her and the children to their home one sunny afternoon. As soon as her parents opened the door, the years melted away. Her mother's eyes brimmed with tears. Her father's voice cracked as he called her name. Rebecca clung shyly to Patrick's leg until Stella's mother bent down, smiling warmly, and drew her into an embrace. Justin giggled in his grandfather's arms, the sound filling the small sitting room like music. They spent the day together, sharing home-cooked meals, catching up on lost years, and exchanging quiet, unspoken forgiveness. It was simple and warm, everything Stella had missed. On their return to the mansion, a letter waited for her. It was from her mother. Stella sat on the couch and read it slowly, her eyes stinging with tears. In it, her mother apologized deeply for the years apart, for not finding a way to reach her sooner. She wrote about how much she had missed her daughter and grandchildren, and how proud she was that Stella had found the courage to leave an unsafe life behind. The guilt hit Stella hard. "I should have listened to them back then," she whispered, voice breaking. Patrick sat beside her, his presence calm and grounding. "You can't go back in time, Stella," he said gently. "What matters is you're here now. You chose safety. You chose life. And your family is still here for you. That's what counts." She leaned into his shoulder, clutching the letter. For the first time in years, she truly felt like she belonged somewhere. The next morning, Stella sat at the small desk in the safe house living room, pen in hand. The letter from her mother lay beside her, its folds worn from how often she'd read it. She took a deep breath and began to write. Her words were honest and raw. "Maman, I'm sorry. Sorry I didn't listen. I should have walked away sooner. I thought love meant enduring pain, but I was wrong. I see now that staying broke me and almost broke my children. I should have trusted you, should have trusted myself. Now I know better. It is better to walk away from an abusive marriage. Even if you think you have nothing to return to, your peace, your safety, and your life are worth more than staying. There is always something to go back to, even if it's just the air in your lungs and the hope for a new day. Thank you, Mama, for taking me back." When she finished, her hand trembled, but her heart felt lighter. That evening she stepped onto the porch where Patrick was sitting, a cup of tea cradled in his hands. The sun was low. She handed him the folded letter. "I think I'm ready," she said. Patrick looked at her, his eyes warm. "Ready for what?" "To stop letting my past define me," she replied. They sat together in silence. The quiet not empty but full of unspoken trust, of shared battles, of a future that no longer seemed so frightening. Rebecca's laughter drifted from inside, Justin babbling happily in the background. Patrick glanced at Stella and smiled. "You've come a long way." She smiled back, a small, sure smile. "We both have." 3 months later, on a very peaceful day, Patrick sat in his usual chair, a cup of tea in his hands, watching Rebecca chase Elijah across the small garden. Their laughter floated through the air like music. He remembered that rainy day in the city, the moment he first saw her, clutching the baby with all the strength her tiny arms could hold, telling him with steady eyes, "I'll pay you back when I grow up." Back then it was just a promise from a child, but now, as he looked at them, he understood she had already kept it. Patrick's kindness had pulled them from the edge of despair, but in saving them, they had unknowingly saved him too. The man who once lived in quiet, empty rooms now had a home full of laughter. The man who once thought his heart had closed forever now felt it beating with purpose. Stella stepped out, joining him on the porch. She didn't say anything at first, just sat beside him, their silence deep and warm. She knew he had been their shelter, but she also knew they had become his reason to hope again. Rebecca ran up, cheeks flushed. "Mummy, can we have soup tonight?" she asked with a grin. Stella laughed. "Of course, you and Patrick always win when it comes to soup." The sun dipped lower, painting the world in orange and pink. Stella glanced at Patrick, her voice soft but sure. "Kindness may be small, but it can open the door to miracles." Patrick smiled, knowing she was right. Because in opening his door that rainy day, he hadn't just let them in, he had let love, healing, and family back into his life. True love should never come with bruises, fear, or silence. True love builds, it never breaks. Sometimes the bravest step is walking away, not because you've given up, but because you've chosen to live. Your worth is never measured by the pain you can endure. It is measured by the courage you have to protect your peace and choose yourself. The scars of the past don't have to be your future. With the right people by your side, healing isn't just possible, it's inevitable. Walking away is not the end of the story. It's the first chapter of your freedom.